Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so very much for joining us today with Speak Up and Empower with Real Talk Travel. A great Tuesday afternoon, and we've got a special surprise for you. We definitely have a beautiful adventure that's waiting for us that's not local, but it's a country that really everybody should know about and how it's got uniqueness. And we got a special guest with us, and welcome Jerry Adler, who is the Deputy Director for Canada from the Israel Ministry of Tourism. So welcome today, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to be with you, and hopefully some people will be inspired to join you when this nastiness ends and inoculations are abound and people are feeling safe and have that energy to go and escape.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that Speak Up and Empower is an online membership-based community, and it's centered around people who really have got lots to say. Actually, they're experts in their field, and they come from all backgrounds, colors, orientations, whatever the case may be, and I'm with Real Talk Travel. So anyway, we're so thankful that you're joining us today, and our adventure is waiting, and we're going to let Jerry take it away and tell us all about this beautiful country that we can go visit.
Thank you very much. Shalom, everybody, and thank you for logging in today to join us for what may simply be an introduction for many of you to Israel, and hope you will be motivated to entertain future travel and create your own experiential journey to Israel, thus experiencing a country that is on many bucket lists. I will also briefly address the current global elephant in the room and measures executed by the State of Israel, the municipalities, hotels, and other logistical infrastructures in anticipation of the eventual reopening of Israel to international travelers. For those who didn't know, Israel is located on the eastern shores of the fabulous Mediterranean Sea. Yes, there have been many days in the past when we have had some difficulties with neighbors, but the world is quickly changing, and discussions for normalizations with more Arab countries are underway to change perspectives. Either way, the world is focused on the health of its populations and nothing more except a return to the state of normalcy. Friendly tourism relationships remain with neighboring Jordan and Egypt, allowing for extensions to include trips to Petra or to even see the pyramids. The State of Israel, like in Canada and other countries around the globe, has taken corona epidemic very seriously in its attempts to lock out borders and international traffic to Israel and establish strict protocols for the control and hopeful eradication of COVID-19 throughout the country. Israel this past week instated another such lockdown to prevent gatherings and crowds, plus to speed up the inoculation of its population. Israel right now stands at the top of the list for the numbers of persons who have received the vaccinations. Our Ministry of Tourism works very, very closely with our Ministry of Health to carefully monitor COVID-19. Addressing the various levels of flags that are raised, red, green, purple, to work in sequence is the goal of our collective efforts in Israel, as it directly affects each of our partners, and outlined a couple of, including municipalities, local tourist associations, hoteliers, tour operators, travel agents, infrastructure of restaurants, attractions, and logistics, including airlines, rail services, and all ground transportation. If it isn't American politics or the debate about gathering to celebrate New Year's around the globe, or even our own local and federal politics here in Canada that dominates the news, health authorities focused on lockdowns, distancing, mask wearing are the new now here in Canada and around the globe, including Israel. Ultimately, it is our collective obligations to stick to the rules in order to best avoid any risk of contracting even the flu, reminding you that there are still people here and in Israel and around the globe who feel invincible and ignore all the red flags. Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. There's a picture of the Western Wall in 2019 with umpteen thousands of people there during one of the holy days. And then again, the same holy day in 2020 at the Western Wall with social distancing and limited numbers of worships. What a sad, sad, sad day. Then empty beaches in the resort city of Eilat on the Red Sea, and what is normally a bustling entertainment and restaurant center in Jaffa, just north of Tel Aviv. Streets are empty, shops are closed, restaurants are closed. Israel did cautiously reopen domestic tourism that offers relief to the economy of tourism sector. Hotels realized spikes in reservations and room nights from the local Israeli population choosing to escape with family or friends for weekends or longer in hotels, camping, in national parks, and other accommodations throughout the country. Restaurants, bars, the beaches, national parks reopened with implemented safety protocols put in place. Distancing and limited numbers of beachgoers is strictly being enforced, just like the picture shows. That is the beach in Tel Aviv. And you can't see too many vacationers there either. But the current COVID-19 wave, just like here in many Canadian cities, hit in lockdowns of settlements, towns, cities, and businesses are being strictly enforced with police monitoring and keeping people limited to within a small bubble around their homes so that any food shopping can be safely accomplished. The eventuality of post-COVID-19 world in Israel will once again reclaim the reactions of our visitors that Israel was beyond their expectations. That is a beautiful shot of the Mediterranean coastline looking north towards Tel Aviv.
That's beautiful.
It's spectacular. Offering you a positive light on just where Israel sits when times are normal, as we all look forward to the light coming over the horizon, and we are not under the dark COVID-19 cloud. Numbers to Israel from Canada have been on the annual increase with a huge spiral upwards. Canadians choosing to travel to Israel continue to realize that it is the ideal, all-encompassing, experiential leisure destination they have been considering with a solid value proposition for their Canadian tourist dollars being spent. The traditional bread and butter group journeys of faith market continues to grow, as does the leisure and adventure market. The largest market is actually from the US. In 2019, we actually had over 4 million tourists. And Canada typically comes in on a monthly basis at approximately 10% of any numbers coming out of the US. And the key number here at the bottom of the chart is that Israel celebrates the fact that repeat visitors to the country is a huge percentage number. Each traveler has his or her own style of travel and agenda of just what experiential opportunities they wish to engage with while in Israel, also considering the seasons, budgets, and potential mix of just what is available to them. Summertime being 45 degrees, 35 degrees. Some people like the sun and sand, or Pride Festival during the summer, going to the Dead Sea, taking a float, going to the Western Wall, visiting the markets, or taking in dance festivals and music festivals that take place throughout the country. Every traveler has his own idea of just when their escapes can happen. And sometimes budgets also dictates just when it is high season or low season, which might dictate the price of airfare or hotels. So the weather is a great factor year-round as Israel becomes a 365-day-a-year destination. Winter in Israel is still warmer than the coldest fall day in Canada. And I showed that a number of comparisons between Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the Dead Sea. Jerusalem is typically much cooler because it's on an elevated plateau, a mountain range. Tel Aviv is seaside, and the Dead Sea being further south at the base of the Negev Desert on the Red Sea is much, much, much warmer throughout the year. Well, that's the question. How will you get there? A list of international airlines continues to jump at the opportunity for landing rights at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion International Airport, or even at Ilan Ramon International Airport just north of Eilat, just north of the Red Sea in the south of the country. You may be aware of the recent positive negotiations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Thus, the real potential for another gateway to Israel and totally new market adventure for extensions, excursions, and beyond. So I've added Emirates Airlines logo to the mix. Each airline, as far as we know, also putting into place a multitude of health and safety measures during the pandemic that will likely translate into more and more long-term sets of protocols as we will move past Corona in the future. I think airlines will remain cautious, probably about COVID testing for quite a while once even with the inoculations go on, to make sure that their staff and other passengers will be safe. The world is getting smaller and smaller for all of us. Israel seems to be at the center of it all. And with companies flying from Israel or from Europe and other destinations around the globe, I've taken examples of flying times so you can see that maybe flying through Europe is the answer to go to Israel, or vice versa, starting out in Israel and going through Brussels or Frankfurt, or even going to St. Petersburg and Madrid in Spain, or London, lots of favorites. And it also offers for the populations of those countries options for short-haul travel to Israel for sea, sun, and sand, for short weekend trips, or even for celebrations of festivals. Israel is host to luxury hotels, boutique hotels, Bedouin and glamping, Simmers and bed and breakfast. Simmers are rental cottages throughout the country, as well as in the national parks, being able to tent and camp. And then there are the kibbutz guest houses, kibbutz being social farms that were established before 1948. And these farms are active, and they have guest houses where tourists can stay. And some are almost the size of little motels. There are examples of major chains throughout Israel, some of the more luxurious ones that have become very popular and in the best locations, in the best cities, with Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, along the coast and in the south of the country, and then more budget-conscious Accor hotels, Ibis, and the Dan Boutique, Dan Hotels, Intercontinental and Sheraton and Hilton, with many other options throughout the country. Again, I use that tagline, but beyond visitor expectations. Yes, it's the Holy Land, but you don't have to be religious to visit. No other destination can boast that is such a vibrant and dynamic multitude of visitor experiences available, all wrapped up into one tiny little country. Canadians return home expressing their absolute unique Israel wow factor and are now excited and eager to return to Israel again and again as being part of that 35% return visitor statistic that I showed earlier. Israel boasts a luxury in size in comparison to any other country. It is a sliver of land. A couple of years ago, we had a couple of adventure-seeking journalists visit Israel. They successfully tested the claim that one could ski on Mount Hermon at Israel's northern tip and then travel south and scuba or windsurf that same day in Eilat at Israel's southern tip. So imagine 80 kilometers wide and only 290 miles or 466 kilometers south. That's the distance basically between Toronto and Montreal. And width-wise, you can do that in less than 2 hours. Here are some real true numbers. You can cross Toronto in 50 minutes, Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, landing in Tel Aviv and traveling to Jerusalem. And now there's even high-speed train that 50 minutes by high-speed train is 25 minutes. So there's many, many options. So just to trace the whole picture we just discussed, Tel Aviv to the north, Masada, Negev, and Jerusalem are all within a couple of hours drive from one another. And as travelers, it allows you the opportunity to see so much more without sitting on tour buses hour after hour to get from point A to point B. And itineraries can be covered in a lot less time, allowing visitors to spend much more time at the site and enjoying it and taking their pictures. The list of niche is huge and growing, and these are just samples of what Israel can offer its visitors. Adventure in the deserts, even hiking and biking, journeys of faith, which we discussed earlier, history and archaeology is a given. It's throughout the country. The culinary scene, culture, heritage, nightlife. For the business traveler, there's big tech tourism, and many, many more. This is just an example of what I came up with. To date, the largest and fastest growing market, bringing the largest numbers of visitors to Israel, remains the faith-based markets. Israel is home to the three monotheistic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and the cities, towns, and sites of both religious and significant and historical significance are throughout the country. So going to the Jordan River for baptisms, retracing the Via Dolorosa and the Stations of the Cross, taking a fishing boat on the Sea of Galilee, going to the Garden Tomb or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and in the north, that waterfall happens to be in the Banyas, the north of the country. It's spectacular. That's the water going into the Jordan River.
It's beautiful.
They come to the Holy Land for spiritual enlightenment and rejuvenation, experiencing the words of the Bible or Scripture literally jump off the page at the places where events mentioned in the 5 books of Moses and in the New Testament actually happened. Professional guides lead groups and individuals using the Torah and the books of the prophets as the guide, retracing places of religious significance to Jews and the many personalities that filled their Bible, or using the New Testament to retrace the places where Jesus lived, taught, performed miracles, inspired, and died. Or Israel has also gained great recognition for the number of UNESCO heritage sites that are dotted throughout the country, with a growing list of important historical, religious, and culturally significant heritage sites. And I've listed them there. Acre for the Knights Templars, fortresses, the old city of Jerusalem, Masada in the south and the Negev, the White City, the Bauhaus city architecture of Tel Aviv, the biblical tells that dot throughout the country, which used to be little towns or villages. They're hills, they're bumps in the terrain. Desert cities, the Baha'i gardens in Haifa, and caves throughout the country. A vast city around 5,000 years ago was discovered, and the largest, most central uncovered in Israel, was uncovered during extensive excavations by the Israel Antiquities Authority that have been in progress for year after year in the Ein Aaron area. The excavation revealing a city accommodating around 5,000 inhabitants. And these happen throughout the country. There are digs whenever there is a highway being built or a major development site being planned. Archaeologists are the first to go there to scour the landscape, scratch off some of the surface to see if there's anything there of significance before any construction or digging can take place, so everything can be documented, or that the plan is actually canceled and they leave it as is. Throughout the history of modern Israel since 1948, Israel has attracted and absorbed a population of immigrants representing over 120 ethnicities. with distinct culinary influences, spices, and culinary experiences to offer. Innovative chefs are making their mark in Israel and around the globe. And as visitor to Israel, your biggest concern isn't the weight of your returning suitcase, but the added centimeters or inches to the waistline and the pounds or kilos gained. The culinary scene would not be complete without pairing great Israeli wines with the foods sourced and produced in any one of the over 350 wineries throughout the 5 growing regions of the country. It's spectacular. Their outdoor adventures are throughout the country, jeep safaris, diving with dolphins. There's the reefs in Eilat, or the Negev Desert and the Ramon Crater, and the well-marked hiking trails throughout the country. Then there's the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea geographically is the lowest natural spa and place on Earth that is easily accessible, and the mineral-rich waters, super oxygenated air, and below sea level location allows for healing of many ailments. Just float and enjoy. And see, I even had Santa Claus there this year. He was exhausted. He parked his reindeer on the beach and took a float on the Dead Sea. The north of the country is spectacular. It's the green meadows and farmland that dots throughout the north from Jerusalem to the Lebanon border. Agriculturally green includes Caesarea, Haifa, Tiberias, Safed, and the Golan Heights. For those who are bird watchers, come in November to the Hula Valley and witness the incredible bird migration between Europe and Africa to see yourself the bird highway of the millions of birds flying over your head. It's incredible to see. Going to Akko in the north to see the Knights Templar vast seaport and fortress that they built, or going to Nazareth Village, which portrays 2,000 years ago of how life was during the time of Jesus. Since medieval times, Israel has been identified as being the center of the globe due to the importance of Jerusalem to the Christian world. That has evolved century after century, still important, but with many more layers, and one no longer has to circumnavigate the globe to reach it. Jerusalem remains the number one top visiting destination for any traveler. There are 2 sides to Jerusalem for us to experience. The old city, filled with the hustle and bustle and its religious mix, its colorful markets, churches, synagogues, the energy of religious mix, and living and breathing ancient city that is still alive. Then there's the modern Jerusalem outside the walls of the old city, offering great hotels, amazing mix of culinary experiences, pedestrian outdoor malls, modern light rail, vibrant nightlife, museums, to name only a few of its assets. Tel Aviv, the beach city, the cultural hub of Israel, with fabulous seaside hotels and a vibrant cultural life and culinary scene that marvels its foodie enthusiasts. For those seeking nightlife, the party starts at 11:30 at night and runs until the next morning at most of the favorite nightclubs. And that's why they call it the city that never sleeps. This is actually where I have decided to end it. I could have added many, many more slides, but I wanted everyone to know that if you visit our website, israel.travel, you will find a lot more information, or use our social media, and they're all listed here. And I'm hoping to one day soon welcome you all at Ben Gurion International Airport. And I want to thank Susan for inviting me today to share this with you.
Awesome. Is there one more slide?
That's it.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, before I put you in this room, I just want to say thanks. And then people can contact Susan at Group Travel by Susan also to get you to all these wonderful, beautiful destinations. So we're going to go back out here. And then, Jerry, that was very informative. We really appreciate that because there's so much in Israel. I don't think people realize. I think people associate it only with the Holy Lands, maybe, but they don't see the other side of the beaches, the culture. I mean, the fact that 350 wineries, wow, in such a little area.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. And to visit them, and you can go there for tastings, and they have chefs at each of the wineries typically that will do, prepare lunches or dinners. They have restaurants, bakeries. They've turned it into a real, sort of like Niagara on the Lake, where all the wineries are here, or out in BC, or any other wine growing regions here in Canada that have some quite amazing places to visit. It's all part of the tourist experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you mentioned from the north, you could be up the north, you could be skiing, and later in the afternoon, you could be scuba down in the southern part of that. And just the diversity of the landscape is amazing to see, like the mountains, the beach, and just the history, the culture. Wow. And the UNESCO sites in itself.
It's growing. There are other attractions and places that have been applied to UNESCO for consideration, but now during this pandemic, world is moving in slow motion, so things aren't happening as quickly as we would like.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it certainly gave us a whole different aspect of what Israel has to offer, like the journeys of faith. And like you even mentioned Tel Aviv, the city that never sleeps because of the nightlife that goes on. So if people are into that, then they certainly would not be disappointed by visiting that city.
It's a very modern, young city. It's very world-class, very across, I would say, between Europe, New York, and London or Paris.
There you go. They could have it all in Tel Aviv. That's awesome. So, it's certainly an eye-opener for me. The fact that I think of the Dead Sea, that's one place I wanted to go check out. And the fact that it doesn't matter if you swim or not, it's going to help you float.
Right, so and they've even tested it. They threw a bowling ball in and it floated.
So. There you go. So it just because of the density of the mineral salts, but like there's beneficial properties when they go to the Dead Sea too, to be able to lay in that mineral bath. You could say
for psoriasis and eczema, and you don't get a sunburn because you're so far below sea level that the harmful rays of the sun don't reach that far down.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, like you said, that the Dead Sea is the lowest part of the earth, below sea level there. So it's amazing how that is, and the crystals that it forms and so forth. But, I just want to say thanks again. It enlightened me more about the beautiful country of Israel, what it has to offer and how spectacular it is, and how we certainly could, it will be diversified in any type of travel you want to do, whether, you want to be health and wellness, or you want to adventure, or you want to be sightseeing or historical, all the beautiful areas that you mentioned, and even the different varieties of how they can stay there, whether it's luxury or boutique or glamping, or, so there's no shortage of where people can be housed, or where they can be going for tours, or just sightseeing, or just enjoying the whole ambiance of the whole country, right?
And still remaining budget conscious too,
and that's
as a travel agent, in planning trips and group trips, it's part of the packaging that you're the specialist at doing. So
yeah, exactly, so that they could really enjoy that. Well, like I said, thanks a lot for joining us today. We appreciate that. And if there's any questions that come up, and if I can't answer them, then I'll certainly get back to you, and then we can be able to answer them. But we had quite a few join today, and we appreciate all our guests that joined us today. And then stay tuned. next Tuesday, we'll have another travel adventure. So you'll have to see where we're going to take you, because it's always good to know that there's still lots of things and places to see and explore for us to really enjoy and be empowered, because travel can empower you. And that's the biggest key. Had people saying thank you for their presentation as well, Jerry. So, all right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So stay safe, happy, healthy, keep smiling.
Shalom.